everyone, and welcome to the Vitality Show. Today, I'm really excited to introduce our guest. This is someone who I've had the pleasure of working with for, gosh, I don't know, it's like almost a decade or something. I really lost track of how long it's been. His name is Robbie Sassoon, and he's the director of a center for at-risk teens here in the heart of Jerusalem. And the center is called Crossroads. And I've had the pleasure of being on the board for 15 years of this organization's existence and been able to watch not just the evolution of teens' lives over that time, which has changed so dramatically. Like 15 years ago, teens didn't have phones, okay? Like no smartphones, and now lots of smartphones. So things have changed a ton. But also been hearing about how much teens are really struggling through Corona and are really in need of care and services and a different kind of attention than maybe other populations that are struggling through Corona as well. And I know that a whole bunch of you guys have teenagers just like I do. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what Robbie has to share with us and the wisdom that he's learned from the hundreds of teens that he and his team work with every single year. Okay, so without further ado, Robbie, hi, welcome.
Hi, Hannah, nice to see you.
So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you came to be the guy who hangs out with teenagers on the streets.
Okay. So before I get to Jerusalem, I'd like to start in New York City. I'm in New York City in my first year of work of a social work school, and I wasn't happy with my placement, so I volunteered at this nice organization called Safe Space. They basically went around the 5 boroughs of New York City, reaching out to runaways, drug users, dealers, prostitutes, and I joined this Winnebago that would go to the 5 boroughs to do such a thing. And I went out one night with them, and I did everything that I could do to not look like who I normally look, which is more or less the way I look now, maybe a little bit more hair. And, you know, I put on my brother's Metallica shirt and my hat on backwards and my jeans, and I spent the whole night, you know, giving out, you know, hot drinks and information to a very vulnerable populations. And what I learned when I was outside Penn Station, a bunch of YU guys were walking by from Yeshiva University, and we were offering them resources. They weren't interested. And the guy who was on this unit with me says to me, out of nowhere, it wasn't a Jewish program, he says to me, "Hey, there's your people over there." And I'm thinking to myself, how does he know that? You know, I did everything that I could possibly do to potentially disguise myself, to realize that somehow this person from a very different culture and background saw straight through that. I came to Israel, and I realized that there was so much going on the streets of Jerusalem, and Tel Aviv, and all over Israel. There was plenty of work to do here. I didn't need to do it in New York City. And I think that was lesson number 1, which is that I didn't need to look past the streets of our home, you know, to realize that there's a lot of help that's needed. Sometimes we're excited about what's outside our home, but really, you know, often, you know, the challenges are very, very close to us. And if I didn't learn my lesson about trying to dress up in the streets of New York City, the first night I went out to the streets of Crossroads, I also, you know, I made a point to put on the baseball cap and put my tzitzit in. I normally wear them out. And I spent the whole night talking to teens who were wearing kippot and their tzitzit out. And it was just such an important lesson to me that I learned, you know, doubly. Probably the most important thing when working with teens is they really don't care what you look like. They really don't really care what your background is. They want to know that you're a sincere person. They want to know that you're being real with them. And I think that if they feel like you're being real with them, they'll build trust and they'll be real with you. And I think that was probably a little bit of how I got into Crossroads, and one of the most important lessons I've learned at Crossroads.
And so what, if you could give us like a bit of a story of one particular teen you've had the opportunity to work with and what you've learned from that experience.
Okay. In my first weeks at Crossroads, there was a young man who was involved with drinking and drugs, and he would start calling our hotline and our social workers asking for help in the middle of the night. Within 2 weeks, there was, I think, 3 suicide calls from this young man who was feeling suicidal. And we went out in the middle of the night a few times to be with him, to take him to the hospital. Eventually, we took him to a rehab. He spent a few years in rehab. He came out of rehab. He still had his challenges. At some point, he's doing great, by the way, today. And at some point, I said to this young man, I said, "What made the difference for you?" And he said, I needed to wait until I was ready. Now, I think that's another really crucial lesson. Let's call him David. I learned from David that as much as we are ready to do for someone, sometimes you just have to wait until they're ready. And before that, it's not that the effort doesn't matter. The effort and the care, I think it's all acknowledged. But in terms of a young man or woman, teenager, making real change in their lives, I think that, we don't change people, we help people change when they're ready.
And so what's it like now during Corona? Like, I personally, as a parent of a teen, I see that not having purpose, not having normal structures is really challenging for him. So I'm curious to see what you're seeing.
Yeah, we're seeing, in line with, I think, general society, both here in Israel and around the world, we're seeing anxiety cases go up. We're seeing depression cases going up. We're seeing a lot of loneliness, and we're doing our best as an organization that works with teens at risk to drop in, to wave, to play a game, anything that we could do. And frankly,
what do you mean play a game? Explain that.
Well, at Crossroads, we're not a traditional clinic where you come in and you sit in a therapy room and we start therapizing on whoever it is that we're talking to. A big part of our belief is relationship-based. And as good social workers, which we mostly are social workers. We're all good social workers, but we have an art therapist and we have a drama and a GED teacher, but we're mostly social workers. As good social workers, you always learn, go where your client is. And our clients are hanging out, and our clients are watching TV and playing video games. And that's a good portion of what we do at Crossroads. We hang out with them, not with the goal of necessarily, I'm doing therapy hangout. No, we're hanging out. We're building a relationship. And through those relationships that we build up through playing a game online, or through doing an art program together, or creative writing, through building those relationships, when the time comes for our participants to reach out for help or to ask for more formal support. So they trust us enough, and we're ready to give it to them.
So are there, can you tell me a kid who went from, I don't know, playing video games with you guys or being in your drama program to then suddenly asking for therapy a year later? Is that actually happen?
Totally. There was a boy, let's call him Baron. And Baron, he loved playing Super Smash Mario Brothers. And he said to us that, I will never do therapy with you. And I'm not interested in therapy. he desperately needed therapy. At the point, he had an addiction problem, and he'd come in a few times a week and play Super Smash Mario Brothers. And eventually, he connected with one of our social workers, and they would play Super Smash Mario Brothers. And fascinating is that, from the game, it moved on to like Baron started talking about his problems, and he started talking about his family. He started talking about his dreams, and he started talking about his challenges. And a few months in, we said to him, this is therapy. And
A few months in, not like the first day.
And he said, yeah, I know, but let's play the game. The truth is, it's just interesting that sometimes it's actually more effective to do an activity, ping pong, or even watch a TV show or coloring, which sort of takes all the pressure off of having to, spill your guts to, while you're looking at someone else. Sort of takes a lot of the pressure off. And that actually happens a lot through what we do. He ended up doing more formal support. He went on to go to the Army. We weren't sure if he was going to make it through the Army. He was fantastic in the Army. He came by, like so many of our clients come by years later just to say thank you. So many stories of people who, some of them don't even come by. A few months ago, no, that's not true. A year and a half ago, I was in New Jersey at a parlor meeting talking about Crossroads. And I was telling them about everything we do. I showed them a video. And in the video, that showed our block and our door. And someone comes up to me after the video. And it's a successful guy living in Englewood, New Jersey. And he said to me, I can't believe it. I'm in shock. He said, I was at Crossroads 10 years ago. You guys saved my life. And I would say that's another lesson, by the way, Chana. I would say that, sometimes we get the immediate gratification, which is nice. It's nice to get the immediate gratification. But other times it would take months or years, a decade, for someone to come to me and say, thank you, you saved my life.
Wow. So, okay, so now we're in a situation where it feels to me, I was actually just talking to a teenage girl who lives in my neighborhood, who's helping me out with my dishes. And I asked her, like, how many of your peers are struggling right now? And she kind of had that face of like, everyone, like this is just, and she's a really great girl from a great family. She's doing okay, but it's like the situation is just hard for teens. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about why you think it's hard, what you think they're struggling with, and what we as parents, friends, aunts, uncles can do, considering all of the restraints that are being put on us by government.
So I would start with how we started at Crossroads, because the first thing that we all have to acknowledge is that all of us are going through a hard time, not just our clients. And, we have a full staff of therapists and social workers, and we have to just be honest with ourselves. This really sucks, for us too. And this is really hard for us too. And we give each other a lot of support. And I think from that energy and from that support, the energy really goes out to our clients. And what does that mean? It means what can we do for teens today, for our teens today? I think that just general healthy functioning is really important. When we meet new participants, one of the things that we want to know is, what's your day like? When do you wake up? What do you eat? How do you sleep at night? What type of exercise do you do? Healthy functioning is so important, and it's one of the things that we, again, this is sort of a step before we get into the deep anxieties or depression. It's so basic, but frankly, I think that it's really the first step, and it's something that we're sensitive to make sure that someone is sleeping well. If it's our children, make sure they're sleeping well and eating well. Make sure they go out for a walk, make sure for a run, do exercise. If they're able to see friends in a healthy way, make sure they stay social in a physical way, in a live way. that's a major change and shift that's happened. You mentioned it before over the last 10 years, where a lot of the social experience has moved from an in-person social experience to a virtual experience. Kal v'chomer, all the more so during a lockdown. And I would say that one of the things that we encourage, one of the things that we really stress is how important it is to be in real live relationships, physical relationships, in-person relationships with people. And if beyond the basic functioning that I mentioned before, if our teens are able to continue those relationships in person in a healthy, safe way, keeping to all the guidelines, I would totally encourage it. I think that I see with my own teens, and I see with the teens, in the center, I see a real impact when that happens.
Okay, so I have like a super vulnerable question. I'm just gonna put it out there because that's something we're struggling with in our home. Is we've got a teenager who has his clock is kind of upside down, and I know that teens like have a later clock than every other human being, but it means that he wants to wake up at noon and go to bed at 2 a.m, and by noon Zoom school is over. So his school runs from 8:30 to 12:30, and by the time he's up and actually ready to get on the computer, Zoom school's over. And we don't really know what to do, because the only thing that we could kind of restrict in his life is him interacting with his friends, which is this thing that we see as really healthy, gets him out, gets him running, gets him doing exercise, but then he's just totally blowing off school. And I'm seeing in the WhatsApp chat that other parents are facing the same struggle of like getting their kids out of bed in the morning, because when they don't have a real physical school to go to, they just don't care that much. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts to share about that.
The main thoughts that I would share, while you're talking to me about school, I think schools are doing this all wrong, by the way. I think schools have totally dropped the ball during Corona. I don't think it's healthy for anyone. The way schools are trying to be regular and teach from 8 to 12:30 in the morning, I think that's the biggest mistake. I don't know if that's helpful to hear or not, but I would say that if that's a battle that you may not win in terms of the clock, I wouldn't minimize the importance of learning, in different ways and throughout the day, and in alternative ways, as I know the Masons have been doing their whole lives, and even if a young teen is or a teen or a young adult is waking up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, there's plenty of time to to go out, to engage, to be involved in healthy activities. Do I personally think, as a parent, as a professional, that it's healthy to wake up in the morning hours and go to sleep, before 2 a.m? Yeah, but we're not always going to win that battle. Although I don't know that everything is lost. I don't know that everything is lost. I think that a lot of the healthy functioning can still go on, and a teen could walk away at the end of his day still feeling decent about themselves, and social and healthy, in that type of schedule. I don't know if I'm answering it directly, but I'm trying to give a concept.
No, that's actually a very helpful answer. Yeah, because we're like kind of debating like how important should we make school, and how, and it's also there's a certain amount of social pressure that parents feel to like meet the expectations of the school so that the school will like them. It's like wanting the school to think I'm a good parent, I know like so many people have this, and weighing that against just feeling like the situation's untenable, and at the same time, like his grades are dependent on his attendance, and it just doesn't feel so particularly realistic. So, okay. And I want to, first of all, because we're getting close to our close, so I want to thank you so much for your time. But I also know that the work you guys are doing is really, really important. And I know that there are going to be people in my audience who would be excited to support Crossroads and the pivotal work you're doing right now. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your organization that you haven't shared already, And I'm also going to post a link if people would like to support the organization, that they can do so. And give us like numbers, like how many kids are you guys interacting with, and are you meeting them in person? Like, how does that work right now?
Okay. Is it okay if I do it within a short story?
Yeah, love
Okay.
stories. Stories are great.
Great. So also going back to about 10 years ago, there was a young man. We go out on, we have a moadon where we see between the moadon and
Translate that word.
Our drop-in center and going out to the streets at night and our therapy cases, we see over a thousand kids a year. And one of the teens that we were meeting on the street was actually, he was selling drugs on the street. He wouldn't do it in the center. And he eventually got in trouble. He went to jail. He went to rehab. And throughout the whole process, Crossroads held his hand, offered him support. He's such a wonderful young man. He took his GED, got his high school diploma at Crossroads. He got involved in our other programs, our drama program. We have all sorts of enrichment art activities. He would come in and just hang out in our drop-in center as well. More informally, was also involved in formal therapy, and he went on to get a degree in psychology from IDC. And so a few months back, he called me. I knew he was working for some financial company in Jerusalem. And I said, hey, yeah, you have $1 million to donate to Crossroads yet? And he said to me, no. He says, but I'd like to give my first $1,000 donation away to Crossroads.
Wow.
Because you guys, were there for me when no one was, whether it was on the street, whether it was hanging out in the moadon, whether it was helping me get my high school diploma, whether it was all the therapy, whether it was being with me in court and in jail. And I want to give that to you. And I guess, my message is, that I would encourage, any one of the people to offer, any support that they can, to Crossroads, so we could do our work in continuing to save lives of teens and young adults.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you, Robbie. And do you have any sort of like closing remarks that you'd like to share with us? Like one piece of wisdom that you've gleaned from teens that we could apply to our lives today and every day?
All right, one last story. The second time I went out to the streets, one of the girls we knew ran up to me, and she was covered in I thought it was tattoos. I wasn't sure what it was. She was holding a big marker, and she said, do you want to write? And I looked at her arm and her neck and her, the parts of her body that weren't covered by her shirt. And she was having people write all over her body, I love you. And that image always stuck with me. And the message that it gave to me about teens is that we can't tell our teens and our kids that we love them enough. They shouldn't need to have to go around asking strangers with a marker to tell them they love you. It's so crucial that we give our teens as much love and we tell them that we love them enough that they feel it inside and out.
Wow. Thank you. That's like a powerful image. Hopefully it'll stick with all of us. And thank you so much for the work that you do and for the time that you've spent with us today. And for everyone else, have an amazing week.